What if I told you one of the biggest mistakes in Forrest Gump, a movie that won 6 Oscars, has been hiding in plain sight for over 30 years? It's not just a small continuity error. It completely changes how you see one of the most emotional scenes in the entire film. Most fans missed it. Even superfans missed it. But once you spot it, you'll never watch the movie the same way again. Stick around, because we're about to pull back the curtain on a blooper that's been right under your nose. To this day, Forrest Gump remains a beloved cinematic journey, celebrated for its emotional depth and unforgettable storytelling. But behind the polished frames and iconic quotes lies a labyrinth of untold truths, hidden production secrets, and clever sleight of hand that brought Forrest's world to life. What if we told you there's a major oversight in the film that went unnoticed for decades? One blink-and-you-miss-it detail that even hardcore fans missed. Let's unravel the stories behind the screen that make this film even more extraordinary. Lieutenant Dan's appearance left an indelible mark on audiences, but the transformation of actor Gary Sinise into a war veteran who had lost both legs was nothing short of a visual effects revolution. With careful technique and innovation, Sinise wore blue coverings over his legs, allowing digital wizards to erase them seamlessly in post-production. This wasn't just a technical feat, it was emotional storytelling at its finest. As Lieutenant Dan's journey spiraled from despair to redemption, the audience felt every ounce of pain, frustration, and eventual peace. His scenes didn't just show the aftermath of war. They invited the audience to walk through it, step by difficult step, even if he no longer could. But that's just the beginning. The film's magic was in its ability to weave fiction into history so smoothly, it became hard to tell where the line was drawn. Remember the scene where young Forrest inspires Elvis Presley's signature dance moves? It's a playful twist on music history, but the voice behind Elvis isn't who you think. While Peter Dobson portrayed the King on screen, the voice that echoed was actually Kurt Russell's. Yes, the same Kurt Russell who had played Elvis years earlier in a biopic. The producers brought him in quietly to re-record lines when the original voiceover didn't quite work. This secret stayed buried until 2016, when Russell finally revealed his hidden cameo. Imagine that. A man who once portrayed Elvis giving him life again, this time without anyone knowing. Moments like this are why Forrest Gump feels like a secret garden, each scene hiding a new story waiting to bloom. One of the most famous historical cameos comes when Forrest meets President John F. Kennedy. It's a proud moment for the character, shown shaking hands with the president after being named to the All-America football team. Yet here's the twist. This could never have happened in real life. The All-America list was announced after Kennedy's passing, meaning Forrest's visit to the White House couldn't have happened chronologically. But the scene wasn't meant to be historically accurate. Instead, it served a higher purpose: to paint Forrest as a gentle ghost, gliding through major moments in time, subtly altering history while never fully belonging to it. And somehow, that only makes his story more enchanting. Speaking of moments etched in memory, the bench, yes, that bench, became as iconic as Forrest's box of chocolates. Set in the heart of Chippewa Square, Savannah, this ordinary-looking fiberglass bench became the launchpad for Forrest's reflections. Tourists still flock there, hoping to sit where Tom Hanks once sat. But they'll be surprised to find the original bench isn't on the square anymore. It's preserved behind glass at the Savannah History Museum, a relic of cinematic gold. Even more fascinating, 4 identical benches were made for the film, but their current locations remain a mystery. Think of them as lost treasures, quietly auctioned off, their value growing with each retelling of Forrest's story. Now here's a detail that slips by even the sharpest eyes. During Forrest's legendary 3-year run across America, he dashes past a TV store broadcasting a report that President Jimmy Carter has collapsed from heat exhaustion. That event happened in real life. September 15, 1979. But the timeline in the movie doesn't quite match up. Forrest's run begins on what appears to be July 5, 1976, before Carter even became president. The history buffs might cry foul, but the truth is, the film wasn't aiming for textbook accuracy. It was painting a dreamlike world where Forrest appears in the backdrop of iconic American moments. A traveler on a personal quest. Still, none of that would have mattered without the dedication of its lead actor. Tom Hanks, known for his humility, revealed just how demanding the role really was. When it came time to shoot Forrest's cross-country running scenes, the team didn't rely on green screens or digital landscapes. They hit the road. For 27 days straight, Hanks traveled across the U.S., slipping into costume, running through one picturesque setting after another. Then boarding a plane. Then doing it all over again. No shortcuts, no stand-ins for those iconic wide shots. It was grueling, physically exhausting, and mentally relentless. But Hanks kept running, knowing those fleeting moments would become cinematic legend. And they did. That's the power of Forrest Gump. It transforms everyday objects into treasures, background moments into history, and a quiet man into an unexpected icon. But there's still more to uncover. One of the most surprising slip-ups, hidden in plain sight, is about to be revealed. And once you see it, you'll never watch the movie the same way again. So don't blink, because what's coming next will take everything you thought you knew and flip it on its head. To get Forrest Gump's Southern voice just right, Tom Hanks didn't turn to dialect coaches or phonetics experts. Instead, he studied someone very close to the role, Michael Connor Humphreys, the boy who played young Forrest. Humphreys, with his authentic Mississippi drawl, gave Hanks all the inspiration he needed. Rather than reinventing the wheel, Hanks mimicked the child's speech, adopting his natural rhythm and inflection to create a seamless transition from young Forrest to adult Forrest, created a foundation the entire film could stand on. And while Hanks walked away with an Academy Award for Best Actor, Humphreys earned his own recognition, a Young Artist Award that solidified his place in the heart of the film's emotional arc. There's something nostalgic about thinking how the voice of one child unknowingly helped define a cinematic icon. And then, there's Hank's business sense, eerily similar to Forrest's intuitive luck. While most actors opt for upfront pay, Hanks did something bold. He chose to skip the traditional salary and instead took a gamble on back-end profits. On paper, it was a risk. But behind that quiet confidence was an understanding. If this film struck the right chord, it would echo loudly. And it did. Forrest Gump wasn't just a box office success. It exploded into a cultural phenomenon, raking in over $678 million globally. Speaking of behind-the-scenes magic, remember Bubba? Mike Kelty Williamson's portrayal of Benjamin Buford Blue, Forrest's shrimp-loving war buddy, left an indelible mark. But what you might not know is that Bubba's signature look wasn't entirely natural. His prominent lower lip was actually a prosthetic, painstakingly designed to give the character his distinctive appearance. It blended so well into Williamson's face that even some film critics didn't realize it wasn't real. The process wasn't easy. It took time to create a believable prosthetic that didn't distract from the emotion of the scenes. But Williamson didn't let a prop define his performance. His soft-spoken warmth and quiet devotion to Forrest made Bubba one of the most touching figures in the film. It's not always the amount of screen time that matters, it's what you do with it. And Bubba? He turned a few scenes into cinematic legacy. Now here's where life starts to imitate art. After the film's explosive success, Paramount Pictures saw an opportunity. Why not turn Forrest and Bubba's fictional shrimp empire into a real one? And just like that, Bubba Gump Shrimp Company became a tangible reality. The first restaurant opened its doors in Monterey, California in 1996. From there, it expanded across the globe, giving fans not only a seafood dining experience, but also a walk down memory lane. Every dish came with a dose of nostalgia: shrimp platters, Forrest memorabilia on the walls, and even waiters quizzing you on Gump trivia. But the story doesn't end there. A young man with infectious energy and natural charm caught the eye of a Hollywood director. That man was Chris Pratt. One moment he was serving seafood. The next, he was on a path toward superstardom. You couldn't write that script, and yet it happened. But let's talk about something even more unexpected. The Vietnam War scenes in Forrest Gump, they weren't shot in Southeast Asia. In fact, they weren't even filmed in the jungle. Those harrowing battle sequences were actually staged on a South Carolina golf course. Hard to imagine, isn't it? But through the careful use of CGI and set design, including the import of palmetto trees, the lush, dangerous world of Vietnam was brought to life with astonishing realism. They didn't just simulate the jungle, they crafted it. The set designers turned quiet greens into thunderous battlegrounds, combining digital effects with practical props to create an environment you could almost feel. It's a reminder that movie magic isn't always about what you see. It's about what you believe you're seeing. And while Forrest's personal journey touched hearts, the movie also wove him into the very fabric of American history. One especially haunting moment captures Forrest witnessing the integration of the University of Alabama. The real-life event in 1963 saw Governor George Wallace trying to block two black students, Vivian Malone and James Hood, from enrolling. Wallace took a literal stand in the doorway, trying to defy federal desegregation laws. But the story didn't end with resistance. President Kennedy sent federal troops, and with Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach on the ground, Wallace was forced to step aside. Forrest, in the film, watches from the sidelines, unknowingly present at a moment that changed the country forever. It's history retold through fiction, but with such care and precision, it resonates as powerfully as a textbook. And there's one more twist that was left on the editing room floor. In an earlier version of the script, Forrest and Bubba's entire platoon was portrayed as intellectually limited, a controversial nod to a real military policy from the Vietnam era. At the time, soldiers with below-average IQs were sometimes grouped together. It was a practice that raised ethical questions, and the Army voiced concerns about its portrayal. The filmmakers chose to revise the scene, narrowing that portrayal to just Forrest and Bubba. Still, what made it to the screen wasn't watered down. The ambush scenes, chaotic, emotional, and sudden, were praised by historians for their realism. Bill Allison, a noted military historian, pointed out that the film's depiction of guerrilla tactics, especially the ambush that injures Forrest and kills Bubba, mirrored real Viet Cong strategies. Those sudden attacks in dense terrain weren't just dramatic, they were true to history. Even the monsoon-like rains, the unrelenting dampness that seemed to drown every frame of the Vietnam scenes, came straight from real accounts. The film didn't just show war, it showed what it felt like, and that's the enduring pull of Forrest Gump. It wasn't just a story told, it was a memory shared. This vision of Forrest as a man lost in his own legacy adds a bittersweet edge to what could have been. Just imagine, a man once celebrated across the nation reduced to hustling door to door, trying to stay afloat. That very contrast was meant to evoke the reality many heroes face when the spotlight dims. It's a reminder that fame doesn't always translate to stability, and even icons can quietly unravel when the cameras stop rolling. But perhaps the most powerful what-if of all was the missed sequel itself. Despite early drafts and interest, especially following the original's Oscar sweep, the project was shelved indefinitely. There were whispers of legal tangles, disagreements over creative direction, and even debates about whether Forrest's charm could ever be recaptured. The studio reportedly feared that tampering with the magic of the original would backfire. And ironically, Tom Hanks himself was hesitant to return. Not because he didn't love the character, but because some stories, he felt, should remain untouched. Meanwhile, let's rewind to the one moment that defied all odds, the iconic run across America. When Paramount turned down the budget request, labeling the scene as non-essential, Tom Hanks and Robert Zemeckis made a bold decision. They put their own money on the line, an unheard-of risk in Hollywood. They each covered the cost themselves, securing back-end profit deals instead. That single move not only gave us one of cinema's most emotionally moving sequences, it also paid off handsomely. Hanks's bet netted him tens of millions, proving that trusting your instincts can sometimes rewrite history. But not every actor who crossed paths with Forrest Gump found similar fortune. Take John Travolta, once the top choice for Forrest before turning it down. He later confessed that skipping the role haunted him. Though he enjoyed a resurgence with Pulp Fiction, the quiet ache of missing out on a cultural phenomenon never quite faded. And Ice Cube, who was approached to play Bubba, backed out, worried the character would limit his future in film. Years later, he admitted the regret of passing on a role that carried depth, humor, and heart. Dave Chappelle also declined the part, afraid it would compromise his brand. He too later looked back, stunned by how far the movie soared. Robin Wright's turn as Jenny became career-defining, but even her casting wasn't straightforward. Before she stepped in, the role circled stars like Nicole Kidman and Demi Moore. Wright's nuanced performance brought vulnerability and strength to the character, qualities that were especially meaningful given Jenny's troubled past. Raised in a home filled with trauma, Jenny's moments of peace with Forrest were not just emotional, they were survival. Her journey from innocence to rebellion, and ultimately redemption, continues to move audiences with its quiet power. Even the smallest creative decisions in the film carried immense weight. That floating feather in the opening and closing scenes, not a product of CGI magic, but a real feather filmed against blue screen and digitally composited with painstaking care. It became a symbol of Forrest's life, drifting on the winds of fate, yet always landing where it needed to. It's cinematic poetry, a visual that captures the heart of the story in a single frame. One more behind-the-scenes story that tugs at the heart. During the filming of the football scenes, Tom Hanks was battling the flu. Every take, every sprint across the field, came with fever and fatigue. Yet he pushed through, embodying Forrest's spirit with grit that couldn't be faked. Those scenes, full of energy and charm, stand as proof that sometimes the greatest performances happen when the actor is quietly enduring their own test. So there it is, the Forrest Gump blooper hiding in plain sight all these years. If you loved uncovering this hidden gem, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop your favorite Forrest Gump moment in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes secrets from your favorite films. We've got some seriously juicy stories coming up. Think blockbuster blunders, Hollywood legends, and the secrets they never meant to reveal. After all, life is like a box of chocolates, but sometimes even the chocolates have bloopers.